Only there can it be unmade. It must be taken deep into the ocean and cast into the fiery chasm from whence it came. One of you must do this. But oh, I told you the one does not simply walk into the shark tank and come out with a victory. Not with 10,000 men could you do this, and certainly not with Derek Carr starting at quarterback. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the dungeon for the best hour of your week, where I am your undefeated host, Alex the Shark Sparks, and joining me as always is the man who laments his upcoming schedule, where he has to play 3 of the top 4 teams in the next 4 weeks. It's Mitch, New Phone Who Dis Black, and last but certainly also least, our producer Vinny, the Gooch Santucci. Oh, but also, this week a very special guest, the most tenacious man this side of the Mississippi. Give it up for Chris Junebro Lee. Say hello to listeners out there, fellas.
What's up, Alex, the Spark Sharks?
Hey!
Delay as always, and then got my name wrong.
I always try. Now I try to make it as awkward as possible.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Well, welcome into the pod, Chris. Are you one of our avid listeners? I think we've got 3, so, with you here,
I need to listen to the last couple of weeks. I've been pretty busy at work, but I'm looking forward to listening to weeks 2 and 3, and then this one as well.
So we just talking. Let's not ignore. Chris just basically said I've listened to 33% of your podcast.
Wow. So why are you here then? You're not even a listener. What are you even here? What are you doing here, bro?
I'm here to drop bombs and talk about my floundering team.
Well, yeah. I mean, your floundering team has a tough matchup this week because it's going against, as you heard, the undefeated Sharks. Luis tried to step to me. I don't know if you guys noticed in the chat, but Luis was talking some smack last week. And let me just check the scoreboard here. I believe if you go to last week's scores, you'll notice that he did not beat me as he promised. In fact, he got shellacked 86-70 with the whole 9 points from Derek Carr, who he was real proud about getting. What about you ladies, though? How did you do this week? I think everyone here had a really great week, except for one team in particular. I'm not sure who it was. Can you guys remind me which of us didn't do well this week?
I got ruined by Nolan.
That's true. You got ruined, but I don't know that was the biggest win for a Sparks family member this week. I won. My dad won. Sylvie won. A lot of Sparks family members won, but there was one Sparks family member that really got the biggest dub. And that was Blake taking on Vinny. Go ahead, Vin.
Yeah, I don't have much of a recollection of that. I think.
Let's
did we?
Be clear here.
Has
number
week
2
three,
score?
Has week 3 happened? Week 3's happened.
Week 3 happened, and the number 2 scorer in the league beat you by only his QB and Jonathan Taylor. It's almost like someone's been preaching a top 5 running back and a top 3 QB wins you in this league. It's almost someone said that a couple weeks ago.
When the first line of the weekly recap is in the largest victory so far this season, you didn't do too hot.
Also, you guys talked a little garbage on my team last week. Is there anything you'd like to say this week, Vinny?
Garbage just by saying that we were undefeated and you weren't. So I passed that baton to Alex. So.
Also, speaking of Alex, I thought he was gonna do the Ace Ventura Sharks do not go in there. When he wrestles the Snowflake, you're Snowflake. And being 3.
I have a feeling I'm going to find out this week that's not Snowflake.
That's not Snowflake. Yeah. But what Alex was also saying in the beginning intro is I was looking at my own schedule, as I do a lot, and it's interesting. I think Nolan's a top team. I think Alex is a top team, and I think Miles is a top team, and then I'm the 4th, right? So I will play Miles and Alex 2 weeks in a row. So that means if I can survive playing Nolan, Alex, and Miles 3 of the last 4 weeks, I'm just going to run a train on the league for the rest of the year. So I'm just excited for these next couple of weeks. Vinny, on the other hand, has to still go through Miles one more time, me, Nolan, and Alex. That's 4 losses right there. That's rough.
No, or just already chalking those up as losses. That's
all right. Let's go to the schedules in on the screen here. Last time I made it where you guys could see the screen, right? So I should probably do that again, huh? Probably should have done it before we started. But that's my bad. How do I go to schedule anyway?
Snowflake, here's Snowflake.
Oh, my team schedule, maybe? No.
Here's Snowflake.
All right. How do I share my screen on this server again?
Yeah, the big green button.
Yep, there it
While
is.
you're
I
looking for
couldn't get
this,
it to open.
I will say what's very impressive. Alex, you do have. I mean, your team 3-0 is very impressive. But Nolan's team is 3-0, and he hasn't been a top scorer at all. And he's the number 3 scorer in the league by only 18 points behind me or whatever. So it's like that's very scary when someone that means he's putting up 90 consistently a week. If you're a top 3 scorer and you don't have a top week, because like it's easy for me to sit here and have fun about being the top scorer, but I scored all my points in 1 week, so it's kind of what I mean. It's like
Yeah, I mean,
Nolan's team, yeah. What?
Nolan and Alex have the best breakdown. They're tied for the best breakdown, which means, no matter which way you look at it, if they played whoever every week, they would be leading the field.
Wait, come on,
Is that how
Nolan.
breakdown works?
That's not how
Oh, no,
breakdown
no, I
works because I have
apologize.
the number 1 breakdown.
They have the best records. I apologize.
Alex
And
is
yes,
getting.
Vinny,
I
that is
mean,
how it
Alex has a
works.
very good team, but he's 8th in points for, has a 3-0 record, and he has the 9th best breakdown, and he's 3-0. Just pointing it out there, not being salty. Love you, Alex.
Be that
I
as
have
it
the number
may, as I have
points
preached for the last 20 plus years,
Fantasy
Fantasy D. Fantasy D matters. So let's go. Week 1, I was the top scorer. I shellacked everybody because that's when I needed to be. Matt scored 82 that week. He scored a decent amount. The next week, I held the serial killer 64, so I didn't need to score high. I kept my score in
So
the low
true.
80s. This week, same thing. Revis and Butthead, I thought he might be a little more challenging than Sylvie, so I amped it up to about 86, mid 80s, but still, just did enough to get the W. All right?
I need to. I need to work on my fantasy D. Agreed. Very much agreed.
Yeah, I mean, you come out and you give up a bunch of points, you're gonna have issues, right? It's all about look.
You're gonna have a
I-
bad time.
I've got the most points in my division, and I've got what is that, the 5th most points overall. So it's not like I'm doing terrible. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I
I'm
haven't
trying.
outkicked
I'm
the
trying to
coverage,
peak.
so to speak. But Austin, great example. He's got the most fantasy points scored, but he's 2-1. Why? Because he couldn't play fantasy D this week. Gave up a buck 22. The Avengers.
Wait, Austin? You mean me? Why do you guys guys can't say my name? I have the top, not Austin.
Oh, sorry, Avenger. No, yeah, see there. Yeah, no, but sorry. Same point that I'm trying to make, right? Like Austin didn't play fantasy D, so now you have the most points scored because you got to play Austin.
Yeah, Austin has 0 fantasy D. He's in last. Um, no, I think it's just I think it's appropriately rated. The only thing right now is Miles' team. I think Miles is top 3 team. It's you, me, Nolan, and then I think Adam can float in as the wild card. Or sorry, me, Miles, Alex, and then Nolan can float in the wild card. Sorry, I apologize.
I will say, Alex, having the worst breakdown in the league, but somehow having a win, that's huge fantasy D for my team.
Yeah, that is good fantasy D. I like that too.
All right, so let's move on. Then we got a couple topics to talk about tonight. One of the things we wanted to talk about, and this might really apply to Chris, draft bust and waiver wire winners. So I don't know, Chris, if you heard when we talked about some of the worst, not the worst picks, but what do we call them? We call them league losers. And unfortunately, CMC was a league loser on our league loser list. Do you, as the coach of that team, consider him a draft bust? Or did you know going in he might not turn on to the second half of the season and you're okay with that? Well, not okay with it, but you know what I mean.
No, I certainly factored in the injury risk there, and I knew he was going to miss potentially anywhere from, let's say, like 3 to 6 games. I didn't think it would happen at the beginning of the season. But that is the gift and the boon of being the first pick. As you all know, I had the first pick last year, and the same exact thing happened to Justin Jefferson. So everybody wants to pretend like the number 1 pick is the best thing in the world, but in a lot of ways, I mean, it's as much of a crapshoot as most of the other top picks. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, just because you have the number 1 pick doesn't mean you're going to have a great team. I mean, some years, sure, it works out, but I think historically I've done the best when I've had picks in the latter half of the draft.
Well, it mitigates your risk in the first round when you pick later. If you actually listen to our podcast, Chris, I did stick up for you and said 2 years ago you went off the board, and I was very impressed by that. Like Jefferson was not the first overall pick, and you got screwed there. And then this year you went off the top of the board and got screwed. So it's like either way you can't win. It's just really bad luck. That's unfortunate. But
Yeah,
yes,
100%.
if you don't get the Christian McCaffrey to work at the top of the draft, because Matt picked third and second, and he won 2 of the last 3 years, and that's because he has Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry, and somehow Josh Allen made it all the way back to him in the second. But yeah, if you miss up top there, you're really screwed. That's why in the last podcast I was talking about Breece Hall being one of the biggest bust or whatever. I couldn't get around to saying it verbally, but it's just because where they're being drafted and what you're passing on. So yeah, at the top 3, you cannot miss. Cannot.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly chalk it up to bad luck. I think JJ was a fine pick last year.
Absolutely.
Some people might disagree. I just think he had a huge upside, and it didn't work out. And then this year I try to go with, I guess it wasn't safe because I'm admitting that he was probably going to be injured at some point, but I didn't think it would be to start the season.
So that brings me to a point that I think Vinny and I were talking about off air with Christian McCaffrey. If you're the Niners and you're Shanahan, like Shanahan's actually on a warm seat right now, a hot seat as a coach, because like how many other coaches can go to 2 Super Bowls and 2 NFC championships in 4 years and be on a hot seat? Well, that's kind of where Shanahan is, and he's going to be judged by winning a Super Bowl. So if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, why would you run McCaffrey in September, October, November? I thought this was last year was going to happen because, rewind 2 years ago when he came from the Panthers, he had half a season to learn the offense, get the system. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Give McCaffrey as many reps as you can and carries so, you can get him acquainted with the Niners offense. But then last year I was like, oh, I'm drafting Elijah Mitchell because they're going to do what they're doing this year. They only need McCaffrey come December time. That's all that matters. But then they ran him as a single back last year, and he was almost MVP. What I think is happening this year is what should have happened last year, and that they are purposely hiding him. He has a a tendonitis injury. That is not an injury that keeps you out of games. That's just like, hey, my calf goes sore faster than others. And by the way, going to Germany and getting the work on is only because in America we don't legalize stem cells. Every athlete goes over there, but they're just not as popular as McCaffrey. The second thing I would say is I think third thing, whatever. I think the only reason McCaffrey got put on IR was because they were avoiding a fine from the league because MGM Grand and a couple others I know called and were like, you cannot have McCaffrey do this with the amount of money that's coming in. So the NFL was going to fine the Niners for how they handled McCaffrey. And so I think that was just a reaction. Hey, whoa, don't fine us. Don't take our draft picks. We'll just put them on IR. And I'm getting this information from other shows and other readings and stuff like that. It's not me making this up out of thin air. But I don't think Christian McCaffrey was ever going to go on IR. I think they were going to float him week to week to week because they wanted the defense as a game plan. But the backlash came in after week 1 with everyone crying that the Niners were like, we'll just put him on IR. So even when he comes back from IR, I don't think anything's changed, except now that he's been placed on the IR, he has time to go to Germany and get some work done, as opposed to having to show his face around practice and on Saturdays to make the defense's game plan for him. I think that's the only thing that's changed. I don't think anything's actually changed in the Niners locker room to where CMC, even when he comes back from IR, I don't think they're going to play him. Not until it's November, end of November, early December. You play him halfway through December. You get him 2 games in before the playoffs because you don't want him cold coming into the playoffs. You run him 25 times for 2 games, and then you have a healthy Christian McCaffrey come playoffs, and your job as Shanahan is completely predicated on winning a Super Bowl. Why does he run McCaffrey now?
So yeah, but what happens when you lose a game to the Rams because you can't control the clock after building up a big lead?
Agreed, but you're hoping that you can have enough talent around. I mean, they're missing Debo, Kittles. I think if they had just Kittles alone, they could have ran out that clock. So I agree with what you're saying. Also, it does look like Purdy's a little rusty. So maybe Shanahan is going to get a couple more losses, and they're not going to have home field advantage. They're going to have to go into Philly or into Green Bay or something. I agree with you, but they're going to do it with a healthy McCaffrey.
I agree in some sense, but I think that McCaffrey comes back a little sooner than that, and that's probably just wishful thinking. But I mean, it makes sense, Mitch. I mean, you're right. Why run him the first 4 weeks of fantasy? I mean, we always talk about if you get through the first 4 weeks of fantasy without, your star player being injured, not only in fantasy but in the NFL, you're
So
in a
true.
good spot, right?
Yeah.
Just because we see all of those season-ending injuries happen, usually earlier, right? So it's like if Christian McCaffrey can avoid that, why not bring him in a little bit later, once everyone's had more games in and everyone's sort of adjusted to the season.
Right.
So Chris,
So
let
I'm
me
very
ask you
nervous
this:
about him.
your team, speaking of injury, your team has been plagued by injuries kind of more than anyone. Not just Christian McCaffrey, but you have both A-Chain and Waddle on the Dolphins, and with Tua being out for indefinitely, their value takes a pretty big hit. Which do you think is the bigger blow to your squad, the injury to McCaffrey or the injury to Tua?
It's a combination of things, but I would say it's probably. Oh, that's a really good question. I would probably say McCaffrey in this league. If we talked about like different leagues, I would potentially say somebody else. Like with Waddle, I mean Waddle is probably wide receiver 3-ish, from week to week, in my opinion. Malik Neighbors has turned out
He
amazing.
might be
Thank you,
4.
Vinny. Yeah, exactly. Deontay Johnson, if Andy Dalton keeps throwing the ball, Deontay Johnson, I mean, I have him in multiple leagues. I had him as a guy who could potentially be a target hog and play really well. And then Drake London seems to be doing okay with Kirk Cousins too. So the Waddle thing, I don't really mind. I mean, I had him last year and he was like a wide receiver 3 as well. But really, I think that the CMC thing hurts so much because I'm just, if you look at my, score against Nolan last week, I just couldn't keep up with his running backs. So I think that's where it hurts. And then Mahomes is obviously underperforming, but that's him. He's week to week and he usually turns it up, some weeks, but he's known to have like under 15-point weeks. I knew that drafting
Least
Mahomes.
amount least amount of passing touchdowns since 2014 and most amount of rushing attempts since 2012. Like, and this is the year that he has McCaffrey. He should be beasting everyone, and McCaffrey goes down. No, Chris is 100% right. It's the answer and only answer is McCaffrey. And not to mention, this is the last week when I was like, we're excusing Chris's inability to back up his stud, and that shouldn't be inexcusable because we were talking about how Chris could be 3-0 or 0-3 type of thing. But then you go and become a great manager, and you mitigate your loss of Jalen Waddle by having Deontay Johnson and Malik Neighbors. Those are great, great fantasy owner picks. So, like, you wiped out that issue, the Tua issue, with your great ability to be a fantasy manager. You didn't wipe out the McCaffrey issue because maybe you just didn't see McCaffrey's injury as serious or whatever. I don't know. But that's what I'm saying is it's 100% the answer is McCaffrey.
Yeah, to be
Even if you
honest
had
with you,
Mason.
the McCaffrey
Yeah.
thing wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't even thinking about his handcuff.
Well,
which
I
was
mean, in
silly.
Chris's defense, until this week, I mean, Ramondre Stevenson was an RB1 weeks 1 and 2,
Yep.
right? And so was
Yep.
A-Chain. So, I mean, until this week, it didn't matter that McCaffrey wasn't playing for Chris.
Yeah,
This
by
week
the
is
way,
when it
give
really
me-
showed because Stevenson came back down to earth. A-Chain's value, I think, took a massive hit with Tua being out. And then,
But I'm not number one scorer or 2-1 without Barkley. So I don't care how much Allen's scoring.
what does that
This
have to
year
do with us
is-
talking about Chris's team right now, sir? Sir?
I'm
Sir, can
saying
you
is
stay
if he
focused
had
on the podcast, sir? Sir?
If he had McCaffrey would be outperforming Kamara and Barkley. He would be 3-0. That's what I'm saying is if I don't have a running back putting up 25 points a week and Chris does, it's easily Chris's 2-1 top scorer and I'm 0-3. That's what I'm trying to say is how important McCaffrey is to his team.
So
Not
you're saying
talking about my team.
like week 1 he started, McCaffrey got him 0 points, but he lost by 19. So you think that McCaffrey would have easily got 20? I mean, obviously he should have started with
Mason got
Stevenson,
like 30, right?
but if he had, he
Yeah.
still would have lost. He would have lost by 1. It would have been dang close. So you're saying that McCaffrey would have got 20 in week 1, and then, I mean, week 3, I don't think there was anything. Let's see, week 3 he lost by 13. Yeah, week 3 would have made a difference for sure. But like I said,
So
that was
he's
my argument.
2-1
My argument was
and
weeks
it's
1 and 2. My argument was weeks 1
But
and
no,
2,
week-
and he won week 2.
Week 1, what did Mason get? I'm looking right now. Where's Miles' team? Dino. Mason had 20 fantasy points. So does that give Chris the win?
That does give Chris the
Let's
win, but that's you're assuming that it works out the same way, right? That he gets
So Christian
exactly
McCaffrey
all the
can't
same
do
stuff.
what Jordan. Yeah.
No, he
a
can, but I'm
5-yard
just
rushing
saying like
touchdown and-
I'm saying there's no guarantees, right? Like there's no guarantee. Like it's kind of like week 1 when Mike Evans had 18
You're right.
fantasy
But
points and
let's just
Godwin did
pretend
nothing.
McCaffrey
And then
was
weeks 2 and 3,
who he
Godwin's
was.
been a world beater, and Mike Evans has like combined like 2 fantasy points the next 2 weeks.
Right,
So
but
it's
what
like-
I'm agreed. What I'm trying to say is McCaffrey, if you just put him at the caliber of the top 3 running backs are playing in this year, where it's more runs than passing, that's really the meta right now, because the 2 safeties are playing so far back that it's just got so much running lanes. What's his name was on the show? RG3 and Barkley was on the Dan Patrick show this week, and both of them said the same thing. Saquon said, it's not the Eagles changing from the Eagles to the Giants. He's like, the NFL's gone to such a too deep safety that I have so much room to run more, as opposed to, it's not necessarily, maybe he's trying to be nice and not talk garbage on the Giants, but he's like, it's not necessarily me switching to a better line. It was how they play it. So I'm just assuming all that if McCaffrey's in today's NFL this week, the last 3 weeks, he could have done what Jordan Mason did easily, if not better. Chris is 2-1 top scorer. That's what I didn't mean to make about Barkley. Sorry.
I just want to touch on something Mitch said right now about Eagles versus Giants. You guys seen Daniel Jones' stats versus Jalen Hurts' stats?
Yeah. Daniel Jones is way better right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
well,
I mean,
I would look, but I'm currently looking at people's teams, and I don't believe Daniel Jones is on a team, is he? So I'm gonna have to go to the free agent to find the stat line for Daniel Jones.
We've laughed about this, Chris. Last week, Alex and I and Vinny and I laughed a lot about the top 5 quarterbacks.
I actually found a meme that I was going to show on the podcast, but I don't think I can because of the way I'm recording this. But I'm gonna read it off to you as soon as I get it opened here. You guys will be able to see it at least, but I can read it off to people in. So Sam Darnold leads the NFL in TD passes. Justin Fields is 3-0. Caleb Williams has the most passing yards in a single game, and Andy Dalton is the only QB to throw over 300 yards and 3 TDs in a game. The 2024 NFL season is drunk. Those are your top
I'm
performing
hoping
QBs.
it averages out. I'm hoping it slows down a little bit.
But that's crazy. And that, I guess, segues into the other segment we want to talk about. We didn't actually do the first segment because we got kind of sidetracked. But since we're talking about QBs right now, who do you guys think are the waiver wire winners? So these are people that were not drafted, but that have been picked up off the waiver wire. And I'm not talking about, just like league winners. We talked about that. I'm talking about guys who like waiver wire pickups who help you win a fantasy week, whether it be a week so far this season, this upcoming week, or maybe you see a week in the future, a guy that you can grab off of waivers, or already did grab off of waivers, that you think is going to win you a week in the future.
If no one wants to go, I'll start it off just because he just picked him up a couple hours ago. I never mentioned this name on the podcast for 2 weeks now because I've been trying to wait to grab him in our league, and that's Jamal Williams, because they're not even giving him anything. If Kamara goes down, he's going to assume the same role, and Jamal Williams is a future league winner, in my opinion. Anyone else want to go?
Who picked him up?
Luis, backing up Kamara as he should.
Gotcha.
But I had my eye on Jamal Williams and the other waiver wire that Alex got. Apparently, the waivers aren't good enough this week to where only 3 people played the waivers: me, Alex, Vinny, 4, and Luis. But apparently, it's good enough for Alex to make 3 moves.
Okay, first of all, how did I get Juwan Jennings? Like, what? I was so shocked.
That's what I'm making
like,
a
what
point at.
What is happening?
Yeah, only 3 people played waivers, and I was going to do Jennings first, but I needed to back up Chase Brown. But yeah, Jennings is a great ad, and you know what?
Let's ask Vinny then, because you needed to back up Chase Brown, but Vinny actually did get in before me, but he took Addison over Juwan Jennings. So Vinny, can you explain why you chose to go with Addison? Why do you think because I'm guessing, because like I'm taking Jennings as a waiver wire winner, right? Like as long as Debo is out another week, CMC's out, Juwan Jennings can be a week winner, and as I pointed out, Mike Evans is not doing me any favors right now. He could be a waiver wire winner for me. Why did you opt to go with Jordan Addison? Clearly, that means you think he'd be someone, that could be a winner for you.
Yeah, no. I looked at Juwan Jennings. I think right now my wide receiver room is like so busted with AJ Brown out, and then getting rid of McLaurin the week that he goes off for like 20 fantasy points naturally. But I went into the waiver wire with who do I feel like has a greater chance of sustained success to fix a glaring hole right now, which is my wide receiver too. I think Juwan Jennings would have been great for 1 week. I was a little nervous that if I let Addison go 1 more week, which I had considered, that next week he'd be a top waiver wire ad. Just the way that Darnold's playing, the volume that I don't even know his first name. Like Naylor is getting at
Yeah.
wide receiver.
Naylor's a
I
top
thought
14 wide receiver right now because of Addison's absence. I like this pick, but go on.
and honestly, I was super surprised. So what week did Cousins go down last week? I think we looked at it. It was like
He
halfway
played
through
eight
the
weeks
season.
last year.
Have you? And I know Justin Jefferson was obviously hurt, but have you seen Addison's stats for last year? He had like 10 touchdowns and 1,000 yards receiving. So I was like,
No, he
all
was
right,
great, but so
maybe.
far this year, he played in one game, had 3 catches for 35 yards, then missed the next two. So I was just curious, you're rolling the dice on him. Is it based on how well Darnold's performing? Is that why you think he'd be the guy to go with?
Yeah, I think how well the Vikings are as a team right now in general, and I thought Addison had a chance to be, one of those decent like wide receiver twos, like a Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle type production, where I could probably rely on him for like 5 to 10 points every week as a decent wide receiver too. So, yeah, I just thought there was a better chance as him as a sustained success option. Versus, I don't know, like, is Jawan Jennings gonna just disappear off the face of the earth like he has in the past?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, he played all of last year when all three were healthy, and he was a terrible fantasy player. So, assuming Kittles and Debo come back healthy, does he go back to being a terrible fantasy player? I get what you're
Right.
saying.
Well,
But
and again, like I said, that's why I consider him a waiver wire winner because it's someone that I think will win you a game or two. Like in other leagues, this guy was picked up and played. Right. In our league, that didn't happen. But people who started Juwan Jennings last week probably won their fantasy league.
oh,
That week,
definitely.
right? They won their matchup as a waiver wire winner. I think there's a chance with Debo still being hurt, with Kittle still being hurt. We don't know exactly when they're coming back, and a lot of times when players come back, their first game back, they're more of a decoy than the actual focal point. And quite frankly, Ayuk has just been questionably bad this year. So I think that next week there's a chance for Juwan Jennings to be a waiver wire winner, seeing as Evans hasn't played well and he's got an injury designation right now. I'm going to be rolling the dice with him against Chris this week. So Chris, you have that to look forward to. Um, but I'm not saying I'm going to be starting him long term the rest of the season, obviously based on 1 week. But yeah,
I'm
that's kind of what I was going with the waiver wire winner. Anyone else have a waiver wire winner they'd like to discuss?
Yeah, let's just keep to it. I'm more interested in the second part of our waivers today. Like, so why did you go Rome Odunze over Khalil Shakir? When I understand we both said off air, Vinny, that we don't want to start Bills wide receivers because you're never going to know which week, and you're going to have to plug them in for all 16 games to get their value because you're never going to know which Bill wide receiver is going to go off that week. So why did you go Rome Odunze over a team that barely even scores offense? I know they forced it to him last week, but like, what's his name wasn't even playing, Keenan Allen. So when Keenan Allen comes back, Rome's not taking DJ Moore's spot. That's solidified. I'm not saying DJ Moore is going to be good at fantasy, but I'm just curious on why you ended up going with the wide receiver from Chicago over after we talked. Was it because I put down too much of the Bills wide receivers of what I said, or what was it?
oh no, honestly, I looked at Shakir. I actually considered. I can't remember who else was on waivers. There might still be a name on there that I've looked at. Alex dropping Michael Pittman is also super fascinating. For Khalil Shakir, and I know Pittman has been absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
And
so we
is
can
definitely
talk about that if you want before we.
a huge bust.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go for it.
So, as you know, I'm a target guy, right? I like guys who have the ball thrown their way, which makes you think I would be into Pittman. 8 targets, 7 targets, 5 targets. Here's the problem. In 20 targets, he's only got 11 catches. That's a 55% catch rate. That is abysmal in the National Football League. So, one of two things is happening. One, he can't catch the football. I find that hard to believe. They paid him a ton of money because he can. Or two, his quarterback's not any good. Everyone was so hyped
Yeah.
on Richardson because of the 2 games he played last year and week 1 of this year that they lost their minds and forget this guy's effectively still a rookie. Yeah, he's not a rookie, but he hasn't played many games in the National Football League, and he has been outstandingly terrible. He's not putting the ball anywhere near Pittman, and so Pittman with a whopping 90 yards receiving through 3 weeks, that's just not something I'm willing to keep on my roster. When there's a guy like Shakir, let's look at Shakir's catch rate. Even though he may have less targets, only 14, he's got 14 catches. That's a 100% catch rate, which means whenever Josh Allen throws the ball, it's somewhere near him, and he catches the dang thing, which is much more valuable from a fantasy standpoint.
Right. And I'm
Yeah,
very
no,
negative on my
yeah.
Pittman, so I'm going to stay out of this one. But
Could I say something before I hop off because I have to get going, boys?
Of course, bud.
Number one, I as I was brushing my teeth yesterday, about to go to bed, I was opening the waiver wire, list, and I almost put in a claim for Juwan Jennings. I will say though, that's not the issue with my team. You guys know I have wide receivers. I don't have running backs. So I couldn't justify dropping anyone on my team for Juwan Jennings. Given that, I also think he's going to be terrible eventually when everybody comes back. This is my shout out to anyone listening to the pod that I'm open to trades right now. I've got plenty of wide receivers looking for running backs.
You know who
It's
you
been a
should
while
talk to, right?
Who is that?
Miles. You
Okay,
and
so yeah,
Miles
I
have
was
the
looking at
perfect
his team.
lineups.
I was looking at his team as well, and that's also tempting. I will say I'm gonna call a sleeper pick here on the waiver wire winner. I think it's gonna be Austin this week, and I think he's gonna bag his first win. He picked up Zach Charbonnet as well as the Dolphins defense. The Charbonnet pickup was a while ago. He picked up the Dolphins defense this week. They're playing the Tennessee Titans. They're projected to have 17 points. I think those two put him with the edge over Sylvie this week. That's my prediction.
So you're going with Dolphins
I'm happy
D as a
Austin-
waiver wire winner. Interesting.
I'm happy Austin's getting all these waiver wires because it forced him picking up Cam Akers and Carson Steele forced him to drop Chase Brown. Any other year he would have held Chase Brown and waited for that to fruition because Chase Brown's probably going to take over the job by like week 9, 10. We don't know when, but he was planning on playing because he was same thing with Nick Chubb or whatever. He's holding him for the long run. He was holding Chase Brown for the long run, but because he's lost so early, puts him earlier on the waivers, he was able to get guys like Cam Akers, Carson Steele, and Zach Charbonnet. So I'm kind of happy that Austin played the waiver so smart because it allowed me to back up Zach Moss with Chase Brown. Yeah. So I'm hoping he gets a win this week.
I'm just saying 20%, more than 20% of Austin's projected score is two waiver wire pickups. So I'm all for him bagging his first one with that.
Well, yeah, Chris, you mentioned you didn't really listen to our podcast, but if you listened to the episode where we went through teams, we were kind of harsh towards Austin's team. We were not a fan of it, and I mean, it shows he's 0-3, right? We were not a fan of this team. And yeah, so hopefully these waiver wire pickups will do him some good because, he's going to be on the struggle bus, I feel like, for a bit. He really needs Nick Chubb to come back and be Nick Chubb. He really needs Charbonnet to keep this job and not have Walker get healthy. So he needs some pieces to fall his way, but maybe his waivers are going to help him out. We'll see. He's also crushed by the injury again. Tyreek Hill's stock kind of plummets.
Look at that Miami over-under, 36.5. Like the over/under for Miami, Tennessee is less than the over/under for Vegas and Cleveland. That just shows
it's the team that had one of the highest scoring, games ever, highest scoring seasons ever last year. Over/under 37 points.
That's crazy.
Hey, all right, boys, I have to log off. Lugby boys, thank you for letting me join you. Hope to see you next week.
Later, Chris. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Yeah.
So we can continue.
I actually love the Charbonnet shout out, and Chris, of course, with the parting words, steals my waiver winner. So the reason I like this so much is one, when I drafted Ray Davis at the end of our draft, it was between Ray Davis, Jordan Mason, and Charbonnet, and we can see what an excellent choice I made in that draft choice. But Mason was kind of more of an outlier because I thought CMC was going to be healthy. And Elijah Mitchell was still kind of there. Charbonnet, I really, really actually considered taking, and mainly just because Kenneth Walker has an injury history. I think Seattle has a running offense, obviously, that's kind of just historically speaking. And, I mean, look, even in his first week with Kenneth Walker there, he somehow scrounges up a receiving touchdown and finishes with 9 points. So I think he's I think he's a week winner for sure. I think it's
okay.
I'm mad about this pickup.
Yeah, continuing on. I think I asked second week. I tried to point out that if in the third round when you went Kenneth, we were saying best picks of the draft, and Matt went Kenneth Walker. I said, remember I named the next 8 or 10 players, and I was saying it looks like he got the right one in that one. It's unfortunate that became Zach Charbonnet or whatever. So who's the next person in that line? I'll just name a couple names right now. Who's the next person who is backing up Kenneth Walker that's going to assume the role and be a waiver wire winner? Is it Braylon Allen? Is it Ray Davis? Is it Connor Edwards-Helaire? Is it Antonio Gibson? Is it Marshawn Lloyd? Is it Miles Sanders? Jamal Williams? Emmanuel Wilson? Or the guy from Tampa? I can't remember. Irving.
Bucky Irving.
Thank you, Irving.
Yeah.
So there's 10 running backs I just named. Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, Connor Edwards-Helaire, Antonio Gibson, Marshawn Lloyd, Miles Sanders, Jamal Wilson, Emmanuel Wilson, and Irving. Which one of those 10 is the next Charbonnet? Or maybe
I think he's reserving. I think he's going to win that job sooner rather than later. He's getting the same number of carries as the starter, and he's getting way more yards out of it. He's also on my fantasy team, so I am biased.
That's unfortunate. No, it's not included. Screw Bucky Irving. I forgot about him. Let's not include him.
So yeah, but Bucky Irving, 9 carries, 70 yards, definitely. 962, 7 for 22 is not great, but 2 really great weeks. But obviously he's injured right now, so we'll see how that injury works out. But he's way outperforming Rachaad White right now, so that's why. And Rachaad White really overperformed last year. So I think when you combine the fact that Rachaad White, no one thought Rachaad White would be the guy last year, right? Everyone thought he was going to lose his job middle season, and instead he took off and was amazing last year. This year he's back down to earth, and he's got a rookie on the bench who's outperforming him. So,
I got a good one, Alex. Can I go again?
Dude, how good would Alex's team have been like 7 years ago?
No, I mean it's amazing that Alex's team is so good with Aaron Jones and James Cook. It's like those guys were not even like that's just such great drafting by Alex. Here I would like to do one before I forget. I apologize. Another one. And that name I included.
Don't hit on my Singletary over Moss pick. I had nightmares about that, and right now this looks like a world beater pick. The Singletary pick over Moss. So
the CEH I named him in this Connor Edwards-Helaire. Here's my thing is. The only reason I didn't pick him up, and I was hoping someone would, and then I could talk about it, but now I'm going to put it out there for everyone. But the only reason I didn't pick him up is the same thing Vinny went Addison over Jennings, is Edwards-Helaire is going to be a great 3-week replacement until Pacheco comes back. But Connor Edwards-Helaire will win someone 3 weeks in fantasy because he's not injured right now. He has mental depression. That's why he's on the IR. So you're telling me an Andy Reid running back who spent a first-round pick like 18 to 22 overall in the first round, drafts Connor Edwards-Helaire, tries to make him the lead guy his rookie year. He gets hurt, tries to make him the lead guy again the sophomore year, but gets outperformed by other guys and McKinnon, and they go committee. And then he loses the job eventually at the end of that year to Pacheco. So now we're in like year 3, 4, and you tell me Andy Reid drafted him in the first round. First round running backs don't go in the first round. If they are, they're usually really good. And he's not even injured. He has mental depression. So once he comes off the IR, if he technically can play through a mental depression, there's no way Connor Edwards-Helaire is not the number 1 running back in Kansas City until Pacheco comes back. The problem is Helaire doesn't come back for at least another week, and then Pacheco should be back. And since Pacheco's built like a stallion racehorse, apparently he just never gets hurt, and then when he does, he just comes back from whatever injury. Break my leg, who cares? I'm back. Like, If I thought Pacheco was out longer, Edwards-Helaire would be the number 1 pickup off of waivers, hands down. But because he's not, it's Pacheco's job. Pacheco earned it outright. But I'm just saying, for 3 weeks, if you need a running back, I don't understand how Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't just everyone jumping on him in the same way everyone wants to jump on Jennings until his respective players come back.
Yeah, I'll take that one. It's because the Kansas City Chiefs haven't used a workhorse running back since Kareem Hunt, like a decade ago, until Pacheco finally started to be that guy the second half of last year. And now that Pacheco's gone down, I don't think anyone trusts guys like CEH to do it, because he just hasn't for so long. Like, there were so many times that, oh man, he could be the guy, he could be Andy Reid's boy, and it just never happened.
But for 3 weeks is all they need him, right? You think he's going to split with Steele?
I mean, Carson Steele was the guy last week compared to him.
Yeah, he didn't really do all that well. And as much as I want to promote and root for a white boy running back, I don't think the talent is even close. I think Connor Edwards-Helaire is a first-round pick running back that Andy Reid was willing to pick on him. I don't think Andy Reid's going to be like, yeah, this guy named Steele is like, I'm basically admitting I messed up my pick. I mean, I think he's just going to force the ball to Edwards-Helaire for 2 or 3 weeks.
I agree with Alex. I know that we kind of vaguely talked about this a little bit last night, Mitch. I think there's that potential, but I mean, I don't think Andy Reid is the kind of coach that's just gonna force start someone that hasn't been good in
Sure.
like 3 years.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years.
And the last person who suffered from chronic depression was like Calvin Ridley, and he was literally gone for an entire year. So it's
He might not
hard.
even come back. You're saying, I got you. That's
It's
interesting. I
also
never
the
considered
time you're going
that.
to get him for, right? So like he can't come back, you know, until potentially week 4, which means maybe week 5 he comes back. Week 6 is their bye, so you're really not getting him for much. And
Right.
he's got pretty tough
How much
matchups
are you
those
getting
2
Jennings
weeks.
for, though?
I'm
Right.
sorry.
My comparison was how much are you getting Jennings for a couple weeks? I just meant like the same thing. It's like a waiver
Right.
wire
Well,
league for
I
a
think
couple.
it's because we've seen Jennings do it, right? Like I think like
True.
I mean yes, going into last week that's why no one here made that choice, and that was a bad call by our league by no one picking him up. But we've seen it before. Whereas if we go to the Edwards Hilaire's stat line, historically, his best year was his rookie year, where he rushed for 800 yards and 4 touchdowns, and that's not an upside that I'm looking to get. That's not upside at all, right? Like he's just been abysmally bad ever
Hey, I'm
since
trying
his
to
rookie
help with the
year.
podcast. Okay, I gave my opinion. All right, it wasn't a very
Look at
good
that
one.
the 3 year average. Like
So over the
is
past 3 years, he's averaged 12 games, and he's missed 5 games a season over the past 3 years, and he's on pace to do that again this year. He has 87 carries for 347 yards, so that's a 4 yards per carry, which is actually not terrible for him, and a whopping 3 touches. So yeah, if he did that in one game, maybe, you know,
One game.
or 2 games, you split that, even split this over like 1, 2, or even 3 weeks. I like it, but over the course of the 4 weeks you need him, it. If you take his 3 year average over 4 weeks, I'm not happy with that production. You know what I mean?
Right.
yeah.
And then the other one I guess I'd say is Gibson. If Ramondre goes down, isn't Gibson like another league winner? Maybe not Connor Edwards or Lair level. I'm just kidding. But
So
how do you guys
my
feel about
knock on
Gibson?
I keep having to search these guys up because I'm not anyone near the top. My knock on that would just be the Patriots running backs have not been great for the past few years. And yes, Ramondre Stevenson was fantastic weeks 1 and 2. And to be fair to Gibson, he was fantastic week 2 as well. I'm not willing to put a bunch of stock in the Patriots running game still being a premier backfield. So even
Yeah.
if Gibson becomes the guy in New England, I don't know that being the guy in New England is like a huge deal. You know what I mean? I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, look, if he gets 20 carries, he can do something with that for sure. But I just don't know that that's what's going to happen.
Also, the Packers drafted what's his name in the 3rd round this year, and he comes back week 6. Marshawn Lloyd. How do you feel about that, Vinny, Mr.
Uh,
Jacob's owner?
I mean, I feel like I traded one garbage running back for another garbage running back with upside
Yeah, let's talk about
at
that.
this
Let's
point.
talk about that trade then, because people were kind of upset that we didn't address it last time. So you made a trade that a lot of people were questioning when you gave up Trevor Lawrence, bad, uh, White, awful, and Terry McLaurin, who historically has underperformed, for Josh Jacobs, who'd been balling out. The funny part of this is Josh Jacobs is someone that you talked about week 1, how he wasn't going to be a thing, and how we were both down on him as a former Raider fan. And because he popped off, you traded for him, and now that he's on your team, 14 carries, 43 yards, 4 fantasy points. Meanwhile, Terry McLaurin, who you always seem to end up with and always seem to be talking about, pops off completely this week, going for 100 yards and a touch. So tell me, how
I
do you
mean,
feel about your trade a week after the fact?
I definitely could have used the Terry McLaurin's points, but it would have put me nowhere close. I think I would have scored like 65. So it's not like it was a detriment to my team. I don't know. Let's be real. Zamir White was never going to be anybody worth playing. Um, if I was Sylvie, I probably wouldn't have done that trade, but I offered it, she accepted it, and here we are. And I feel like Josh Jacobs is just playing for a coach he doesn't want to play for right now, who is his name is Vinny Santucci, and he decided to sit this one out. And, and yeah, I hope it plays off in the long run, but I guess I think Josh Jacobs is just a big name that everybody overvalues, and so I know like the trade was questionable, but at the end of the day, not like it was absolutely absurd if you assume that Josh Jacobs is
The
RB
only
18 to 26, you know?
The only part that was questionable for me was more from Sylvie's standpoint was like she trades for Trevor Lawrence because Caleb Williams is just bad, and then she doesn't start Trevor Lawrence, which ironically works out for her, right? Because like Williams has his best game, goes for 20 points, which is just fine for QB, and Trevor Lawrence has another 11. So like I still don't understand the trade from her standpoint, especially since she didn't end up starting Trevor Lawrence. She did end up having to start Zach White, so his 3 points just barely got outperformed by Jacob's 4 for
Sylvia,
you.
if you're listening, Darnold's still a free agent.
Yeah. Somehow Sam Darnold's still a free agent. You might want to pick him up. He could be a waiver wire winner, just like the Red Rocket Andy Dalton who popped off last week.
The only reason I vetoed is because it was Vinny, honestly, and I was having fun with Vinny. But in reality, McLaurin and Jacobs are probably going to be around the same fantasy value, but it just helps Vinny out a little bit more because it seems like running backs are going to be harder to find than wide receivers. Like I know McLaurin might be a 20 to 24 receiver, but you can. There's so many like receivers, like even Khalil Shakir, she could have picked up and just started him every week, and then you get the Bills' offense and him. So it's like the only reason I vetoed this was fun for Vinny, and then it's like, Alex, I have a question for you. When's the last time you've gotten a trade in this league?
Well, I'm pretty anti-trade for a lot of reasons. The last time I traded in this league was actually before week 1 of this season, where I traded for my boy Kirk Cousins. I gave up Matthew Stafford.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And picked him up.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, besides the Kirk Cousins for Matthew Stafford trade, when's the last time you've traded?
So, for those who don't know my history in DoD, the first 4 trades I made, the person that I traded for got injured and was out for season within 3 weeks.
Next week. And he was a top 3 player.
Every single time it happened.
Okay.
So
Vinny,
I've been very anti-trade for a while
until
I finally made a good trade where I swindled someone into taking Eric Decker. This was during the Tim Tebow quarterback years. I gave up Eric Decker for a stud, and some absolute scrub bought the bullet and took Decker, and that was by far the best trade I ever made. Vinny, do you remember how I traded on that trade, by the way? Oh, he's muted.
I actually don't remember who I traded for. Was it Willie Parker?
Yes.
No, I was just pointing out that you were the one who made the trade. I think it might be Vasily. I'm not sure. I don't even remember who it was, but I just remember I was able to swindle you into taking Eric Decker, and I was so proud of myself for that. But that's the only good trade I've ever made in this league. All the other trades I've made have just been terrible, so I just kind of gave up on trades, and I just try to win through draft, and I mean it's working out for me. If you draft well, you don't need to make trades.
Vinny, besides this year, when's the last time you got a trade?
I'm pretty sure I get a trade a year.
That's what I'm getting at here. How does this keep happening? Why are people like Vinny so much? Stop it, everyone. He's not a great guy. He really sucks. Stop trading him.
I think there's something to be said about just being okay with people rejecting it. You want to have too long of conversations with everybody about a trade and convince them to do it. I don't ever have a conversation with somebody. I just spam people's inboxes, and when someone accepts something, they accept it, and it's I don't need I don't need the pitch, you know.
I don't pitch it. I just talk about it before I offer it because I'd rather have the opinion of the league because I know that's what happens on all of my trades. Literally last year, Sylvia and I came to an agreement for Thielen for Devontae Adams, and Adam and my older brother, not Adam. Geez, I don't know why Adam was even in part of this, but I traded with Sylvie Thielen for Devontae Adams. Asked Sylvie, 100% true. She kept offering to me for 2 weeks, Mitch, why aren't you accepting the trade? She's giving me Devontae Adams. I'm giving her Thielen. And the only reason I didn't do it is because my older brother said if I win this year, it's an asterisk, and I can't trade with someone out of playoff contention, and it wouldn't be a fair W or a fair championship. So it's I have these rules and standards that I go by, and Vinny just sends out all these trades and somehow gets people to accept. It's I want to just send out 9 trades and just someone check.
Bro, I had 0-7 Cam trade me Jamar Chase. You think I care about what other people think? No, I'm trying to win ships, bro.
You got Jamar Chase for Deontay Foreman, who, by the way, 2 weeks later wasn't even the running back for Carolina.
I'm just saying, you care too much about people think. I just want to win a game.
Well, no. I don't want my brother for the rest of my life going, no, actually, you only have 5 championships because one of those is an asterisk. So it's okay, thanks, bro. I need to beat him in his own eyes. That's the way I got to play.
I mean, Vinny got 4 points out of Brian Thomas. He didn't need all those points from Trey McLaurin. He didn't need McLaurin 16. He got 4 from Thomas, right, guys? Vinny,
dude, 2 years ago you got Chris Olave for Raheem Mostert. So you've traded There was no trades last year, actually, which is surprising. Dude, and then you've had a trade, you had two trades 3 years ago. What are you talking about?
Me?
Yeah, you had, so there was
He's
zero
certainly
trades in
not talking about me.
2023.
Wait, I
In
never.
2020, in
How do you look at the
2023,
trades?
in 2023, there was no trades. In 2022, you traded Jeremy McNichols for OBJ.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was completely useless.
no, in 2022, you traded Mostert for Olave.
Yes, and that was with my little brother Miles. And remember, we had to have like a discussion. Everyone was like, "That's why would you help Mitch out? Why would you help Mitch out?" And then 2 weeks later, you got Jamar Chase.
And then you traded,
And the only person who will trade with me is my little brother. That's it. No one will.
Chuba
Hey, hold on,
Hubbard
Mitch.
for
Mitch, before
Jerry
you have this
Jeudy.
pity party, I'm going to ask you a serious question. I want you to be honest with our viewers. When is
Yeah.
the last time you offered me a trade?
Oh, that's true too. I
So
never offer
you
a
can't
trade
say
'cause
that
I don't-
no one will trade you when you don't offer
That's right.
people trades.
The people I want me to trade me don't trade.
Okay,
me.
that's fair. Yeah, the people you
The
want to trade
Sylvian
won't trade you.
Camerons, the Sylvian Camerons that Vinny gets, I want them to trade with me. And Cameron's always got like five.
I
wide
mean, so
receivers.
far Sylvie made out like a bandit in her trade, so I don't know what you're worried
Oh.
about.
No, I agree, and also I want to be fair too. I do think Josh Jacobs is in trouble. He had like it didn't look good. The only thing Josh Jacobs has going for him in this league is he's on an offense that's going to score a lot of points. So you can have really bad games and it get masked by your TD run. So like Alexander Madison looks like a good running back. But that's just because he's getting all the TDs. And so it's like I'm not
Yeah.
saying the Raiders have a good offense. I'm just trying to make an example off the top of my head that where it's like in our league scoring, Jacobs has the potential to at least score points, whereas Zamir White's not going to have a potential. So, and
Yeah.
I agree, Alex, with what you're saying, not trying to sidetrack it. I don't offer you or Matt trades for a very specific reason. I don't want you
Yeah,
two to win.
I also will just go ahead and say, like, when it comes to trading for a running back or a wide receiver or quarterback, I don't love Jacobs, but there's no way that Green Bay is going to admit that they made a 4-year, $48 million mistake in the first season of Josh Jacobs. So rookie
Right,
running
true.
backs or not, like, they're going to give him.
Right, the
Below.
third round. They paid him and then drafted a running back.
If
in
only
the
they had
third
freed
round.
Aaron Jones, am I right? Because Aaron Jones is popping off. Let's go.
Seriously. And I can't believe my Darnold thing's helping Alex the most out of anyone. Alex and Nolan are reaping the benefit from the Darnold bet. No, I agree, Vinny. And no, well said. Well said.
All right, so we've covered waiver wire winners. We're getting close to the end of our time here, but real quick, let's go over. Do we have any draft busts? So we've talked about league losers already, so we don't need to rehash the guys we've already talked about as league losers. But are there any other draft busts that people that were taken that we thought were going to perform and not just haven't performed, but just have been kind of abysmally bad? So, like for example, CeeDee Lamb has been really bad so far, but I don't think he's necessarily a bust, right? Like he's still getting the targets. He just hasn't gotten in the end zone. I'm hoping that will improve. We'll see. His catch rate is low, so I'm hoping that improves. I think it's like the Ayuk situation that maybe once they get more reps after holding out for a bit, they'll be better. So we'll see. This could be a bust. Right now, I'm not willing to call it that. But are there any other guys that have just been woefully underperforming to the point that you think they're just a complete bust at this point and they're just not going to recover from it?
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill. And is that purely because of the Tua injury, or did you think that after week one, even when he had Tyreek
I
Hill?
would have probably put him in the same category as exactly how you just described Lamb, but now with the two injury, I can go full bust.
Sure. Yeah, because to look at his stat line here, 7 grabs on 12 targets for a $130 and a touch. Now, granted, one of those was a 70-yard touchdown, so 6 catches for 60 yards would not have been a good week. So he was salvaged by the home run, but that's what he does, so we're not going to count that against him. But then, the next week, the week 2 goes down, 3 grabs for 24. The first full week without Tua, only 5 targets, only 3 catches, 40 yards. That's not going to get the job done. So that's definitely that's an injury-based one, but still that could definitely be a draft bust based on how high he was taken as the second wide receiver off the board. Yeah.
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 Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think that's a big one. For me, I think this draft bust question is difficult this early in the season. I'm trying not to be biased and obviously go like anybody who's injury. Like I feel like injuries just aren't a fair bust. Like that's just unlucky, you know. It's like you're not necessarily taking that draft value and then they're underperforming. When we talked about
to be fair to Mitch, Tyreek Hill's not injured himself. His quarterback being injured is what makes him a bust. But yeah, I get what you're
Right,
saying. Like
no,
I don't want to yeah, I don't want to pick Pacheco right because he got hurt. So
No, it's fine.
So yeah, but
No,
okay.
I actually think Tyreek Hill is fair because like Tua is hurt, like Reek's not hurt, but it does definitely affect his performance, especially where his draft value was. Uh, last week when I kind of said like tight ends, early round tight ends, I thought early round wide receivers, but I think a lot of that is looking at the list. CeeDee Lamb held out, Jamar Chase held out, Justin Jefferson was an unknown quarterback, like AJ Brown's been hurt, so like I don't want to go that route either. I think if you're looking about like where someone was drafted, and how they've been performing, I kind of start to look, and no offense, Mitch, at like the kind of this like round 4 or 5 turn, like DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Waddle. Like those are all guys that aren't even like in the top 50 at their own position right now. I hated George Pickens going into the season. We talked about it on the first podcast. But I mean, when you draft guys in the round 4, round 5, and not even necessarily because of an injury, they're not even cracking the top 50 at their position through 3 weeks. Like that's brutal. I don't know.
Okay,
if you
I would
can...
like to hear, but so my DJ Moore pick, I'll agree with you. But if you look at all the picks after, like who?
I mean, that Mark
London,
Andrews. You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
Let's go Mark Andrews because Mitch and I were talking. I have Mark Andrews in like 4 leagues this year because I was like, this value is insane. You're telling me like tight end 2 for the last 4 years, barring injury, is available in rounds like 5 and 6, and I look like a complete moron because this dude is hot trash garbage, and I have no problem saying that he's probably my number 1 bust in fantasy football right now.
What round was he in?
I mean,
there you go.
Round 4. Round 4 for
right,
our
look
league.
at 4 and
go ahead,
5.
Mitch.
No fantasy points. No, I'm just saying. If you look at the active points besides the QBs, because that's not fair. Look at the points. Like none. No one has points. Like Pickens has active 15 points. I guess London has 24 active, so Chris started on both times. But like you go all the way, and then I guess it's Aaron Jones again with 40 active points and a great pick, Alex. So it's like James Conner and Aaron Jones were the only people that should have been picked in the 4th and 5th round. I agree with you. It's wild.
Speaking of wild, and not to get necessarily off topic right now, but my wife just texted me, and it is confirmed on the internet that the Beer Hunter has officially closed its doors forever.
Wow,
No way.
That's a big deal. What happened?
I don't know. It just says that the owner is working with restaurant brokers to try to find someone to take over the spot, but the Beer Hunter is officially closed as of yesterday.
Did they lose their liquor license or something? 'Cause that's a big deal.
I was just there with Chris like a week ago. So yeah, that's crazy. Like that's just something that anybody who lived in the Coachella Valley would know. Like the Beer Hunter closing was just not an option, whether you loved it or you hated it. Like that just was a staple that was going to be around forever.
And I'm reading right now, and it's saying it's related to its lease. I'm gonna text some people. Like I won't name drop anything, but I'll text some people right now and see if I can figure it out. But it looks like the lease or whatever. That's wild. Looking into losing it would be really dumb. I mean, if they don't open a sports bar there, it's just the only reason the Beer Hunter survived was because of the location. The Beer Hunter was nothing special.
I will say
that's why
the one memory I have of going there was with Vinny to watch a boxing match, and it was one of the only boxing matches I've ever watched. I was like, that guy clearly took a dive. This is clearly a rigged sport. I'm done with boxing. It was Oscar De La Hoya back when he still boxed. It was the Phantom Punch. Yeah. They showed the replay. The punch doesn't even hit him, and he goes down. I was like, oh man, they should not have shown that replay.
I remember that. I still to this day I do want on this podcast, and maybe like as a special episode just to talk about Alex and Mitch's perceptions of what we consider sports.
Oh yeah, for sure. We will cover that topic in the future. Because fantasy football's not a year-round thing, right? So if we want to keep going after the fantasy season, we'll get to stuff like that. But wrapping this segment back up because we do have to wrap up the pod.
Wait,
real quick, my league not league losers. What's up?
Obscure sports.
I want Alex's bust, and then we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, so these are my bust picks are going to be a little higher up in the draft board. They're going to be running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs and Travis Etienne. Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm sorry, but Montgomery's just so much better. Like, don't get me wrong, Jahmyr Gibbs has played well. I'm not knocking how well he has played, but Montgomery is getting more touches, more yards, getting the touchdowns, and Montgomery got drafted. Let's see, Jahmyr Gibbs got taken, 14th overall, whereas how far do we have to go down to find Montgomery here?
Round 4, because I would have gone DJ Moore.
So I just think because of that. So I don't think Gibbs is doing poorly. That's not what I'm saying. But I just think considering how much more you're getting out of Montgomery, who you could get so much later, that makes this a bit of a bust. And then Etienne, the Jaguars are just terrible right now. Like 9, 11, 7, like that's okay, but that's not what you want out of your RB1. And when you're taking someone, third in the second round, that's what you're looking for. As an RB1, that's not RB1 numbers. He's currently RB22, right? So he's barely an RB2 at this point.
Over the boy James Cook. Over your James Cook pick, too. Let's just highlight that.
My James Cook, well, not even just James Cook, right? It's like he's RB22, RB5, RB12 with Achan.
That's terrible.
RB2 with Kamara. A lot of high RB7s like David Montgomery, like I talked about. So there's a lot of running backs that are doing way better than he is that you spent a lot lower draft capital on.
And you're also forgetting guys like Mixon, who only played 1 week, and still, if he just played one of these other, he'd be much higher up the list than Etienne. But yeah,
hey
there's a
Alex,
lot.
do me a favor, scroll up to the top again.
Yeah.
What you got working up there, buddy? Who we adding? Who did somebody drop that Alex wants?
Oh, don't worry about it, bro. You want this right here? You want to know what this?
Oh, what's going on up there? Someone dropped someone that Alex is trying to pick up.
Alex?
Oh, man. All right, hold on.
There's a waiver pick here. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast for this week.
Who is it?
So, what you guys can speculate, who is Alex trying to grab? All right, thank you so much for listening. Hope you guys have a wonderful time. Say goodnight, fellas.
Good night.